Sagama, Padamare, Ni, Ni, Re, Ma, Dhapa, Ga, 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 Sagapa, Padamare, Ni, Ni, Re, Ma, Dhapa, Ga, 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 Mana, Manatil Dhyasa Madhuni, Umale Phalashruti, Saraswati Chagavaryatil Jyoti Phalashruti, Mana, Manatil Dhyasa Madhuni, Umale Phalashruti, Saraswati Chagavaryatil Jyoti Phalashruti.
Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you. You already know what logic is. It is a science of reasoning which is interested in the correct process of thinking. Logical thinking is analytical thinking and inferential thinking, which allows us to learn and make decisions that will affect our lifestyle. This thinking has to be developed with proper guidance and training. Logical thinking cultivates the power to understand abstract concepts. With maturity, it improves, and with practice, one can strengthen this power. You are here to actually practice the HSC board exam papers of logic. So without wasting a minute more, let us start with our logic syllabus. The Maharashtra State Bureau of Textbook Production and Curriculum Research has introduced new logic textbook for standard 12th. You must be thorough with this book, otherwise you will not find the subject easy. You must know the basic concepts of logic given in this textbook. You have to read right from the beginning till the end because this book is very important. The features of logic curriculum. The curriculum is student-centered, activity-based, application-based, practical significance, and to improve the power of reasoning and expression, to prepare you to face the challenges in competitive age of life. So, if you study logic, you know that it is a science of reasoning and more of activities given in the textbook where you not only learn the basic concepts of logic and the principles of logic, but you have to actually apply them in your day-to-day life and various fields in which you will be making your career. So now when you open the book, you can see the units in it, various units. We have 7 units in the logic textbook. The first is the decision procedure.
Little louder.
First is the decision procedure. It carries compulsory 8 marks and 11 marks for option. The second is deductive proof. It carries 8 marks compulsory and 11 for option. Predicate logic, it carries 18 marks. It is compulsory. The weightage is more for predicate logic and the optional marks are 23. Then the fourth is the traditional logic. It carries 18 marks again. So these two chapters, 3 and 4, are very important because the weightage is more for them. and in option it carries 28 marks. Then syllogism, it carries 8 marks. This chapter is very important chapter because it is for all the entrance exams which you will be appearing in future. All the entrance exams like railway, then in all fields, you know that logic is very important. So this, we have introduced this, particularly the syllogism chapter. You have to give more emphasis on it, though it carries 8 marks and in option 15 marks. Then grounds of induction, 10 marks for compulsory and 16 for option. Then you have hypothesis, the 7th one, which carries 10 marks compulsory and 16 for option. So total 80 marks paper, and for options it is 120. Then we go to the next. Now, so far as knowledge is concerned, it carries 16. But your understanding should improve, for which there are 26 marks. Compulsory 26, but option 35. Then for application, maximum application 38 marks, and optional marks are 61. Total 80 marks and optional marks are 120. As knowledge is concerned, only 24 marks for option. But understanding, so more than knowledge is understanding, and more than understanding is application. So you have to apply the principles of logic more. You must learn to apply them because you are applying them in your day-to-day life. Now we come to types of questions. We have objective questions in paper, which is compulsory of 20 marks. There is no choice. So you don't have any options for that. So it's just 20. Then short answers, you are having it for 54 marks, and option marks will be 88. Then you have long answers, which is compulsory 6 marks and optional marks are 12. So total we have 80 marks paper again, optional marks are 120. Now we come to the HSC board logic question paper pattern. You know that this year it is a new syllabus and you have 80 marks paper for 3 hours. Note that all questions are compulsory and figures to the right indicate full marks. Here you have to note one more thing, that for objective questions, you will have to write the whole statement, and with the answers you will have to write. So far as fill in the blanks are concerned, true or false are concerned, and then you will be having objectives like give technical terms and match the columns. For all this, you will be writing the whole statement. Then we have to write each answer on a new page. Even the sub-question answers also will be writing on a new page. Now we come to the question number 1. Question number 1A. You have fill in the blanks with suitable words from those given in the brackets. That is, you will be asked 6 and you have to give 6 minutes for fill in the blanks, 1 minute each. Okay. Now you will have to note down that always write the whole statement with answers for the fill in the blanks and underline the correct words asked. Okay. Now suppose you write only the answer. Say options given are Aristotle and Plato. If you write only Plato, then it will be wrong. Then it will be wrong. If you write Aristotle and Plato and keep, then also it will be wrong. If you write Aristotle was the founder of logic and you underline logic instead of Aristotle, then also it will be wrong. These are the mistakes you usually tend to do. So avoid such mistakes. So finally, you have to write Aristotle was the founder of traditional logic, and underline the word, correct word is Aristotle. So this is the correct way of writing the answer. Now we come to question number 1, B, true or false. Sorry, it is give logical terms for the following. 4 will be asked and you have to write all the 4. There is no choice. 4 minutes you will have to give, 1 minute each. Again, you note it down that you have to write the whole statement with answers for logical terms also. You will have to write the whole statement, and below the next line, you will be writing the answer. Now the question supposed is asked, the term that occurs in both the premises but does not occur in the conclusion, the answer is the middle term. So which should be written in the next line. This is the way of writing the answer paper. Then we come to the question number 2A, true or false. You will have 6 will be asked and you will have to write 6. There is no choice again. 6 minutes you will have to give for this answer. 1 minute each. Again, you will have to remember that you will have to write the whole statement with answers for true or false also. Here what, suppose the question asked is A through W, small a through W are used as individual variables. Your answer, if you write it as true, then it will be wrong answer. Of course, because you have not written the statement and the answer itself is wrong. Then if you write both the options and keep, then also it is wrong. The method of writing here is write the whole statement with the answer in the next line in the bracket. The answer is false. So you will be writing it in the bracket in the next line. This is the way you're supposed to write the answers. So this is the correct way of writing the true or false. Then we come to the next B, question number 2B, match the columns. 4 will be asked. You have to give 4 minutes, 1 minute each. Note, always write both the words from column A and answer from the column B and match the columns. Okay. So now your example A and B are given. Now I have given examples of only 2, but you will be asked 4. Suppose the answer for first is B. You are not supposed to write 1B, 2A. If you write like this, then you will be given wrong. So what you are supposed to write? First, hypothesis, B, tentative solution. So this is the correct answer. Then second, perception, A, becoming aware of an object. This is the way of writing the match the columns. So children generally tend to write 1B, 2A. So they might lose their marks here. So be careful while writing the match the columns also. Now we come to question number 3. A. You will be having shorter truth table. You will have to solve 2 out of 3 and you have to give 10 minutes for this. 5 minutes for each answer. Means you have to be thorough with this. So you need practice, and PHALASHRUTI will be giving you practice with question papers. So you will have to practice them. Now note, you have to be thorough with the truth values of the truth functional compound propositions here. You must know all the truth functional compound propositions and their truth values. Secondly, for truth table, shorter truth table, what is the first step? You will have to always write false below the main connective. Many a times, students write true below the main connective and keep there, they lose the marks. For every step you solve carries marks. So you have to be very careful while solving the shorter truth table method. If the possibility is 1, solve it. If you get inconsistency, then your answer is tautology. And when you get no inconsistency, then it is not a tautology. Here, many a times you get confused with the word consistency and inconsistency. So don't think about consistency because there is no word consistency in logic. Either you have inconsistency or you do not have inconsistency. Inconsistency means you are violating the rules of logic, so your assumption was wrong and the statement form is tautology. But if you do not find any inconsistency, means you do not violate any rules of logic, that means your assumption is correct and the statement form is not a tautology. Now, if the possibility is more than one, then what you're going to do? Solve it till you get no inconsistency, till you get correct. In the case of conjunctive proposition, you have more than one possibility. So the whole expression, if you get no inconsistency, then the whole expression will be not a tautology. In case of equivalent proposition also, there is more than one possibility. You have two possibilities. So you solve it. And if you get in both inconsistency, then only the given statement form will be tautology. And suppose if you get inconsistency in the first and no inconsistency in the second, then the whole expression will be not a tautology. This you will have to note. Then you will also have to note one thing, that if you get no inconsistency in the very first step, then no need of solving further steps. This is applicable to all where you have no inconsistency in the first step. Okay, so note this down. Then you have to number each step. Many a times students forget to number the steps, which is very important. Then many a times the students also forget to mark the inconsistency. This is also very important. If you get inconsistency, you are supposed to mark that inconsistency. Let us take one example. See the solved example here. You have got inconsistency in which steps? In step number 3 and 6. So you have to mark them with a cross below both the steps. And you will have to mention those steps in your reason, where you will be writing that there is inconsistency in step numbers 3 and 6. So our assumption is wrong. What we have assumed? False. Always we have to assume false because it is an indirect method, isn't it? So we have to, what we have to do is, we have to mark the inconsistency and say that our assumption is wrong, and hence the given statement form is tautology. You already know tautology means all true below the main correct. So now we come to the next question, number 3b. It is of CPIP sums of validity, and it carries how many marks? 6 marks. So one, you will have to solve 2. So you have to give 5 minutes for each. Don't try to solve extra sums because you will be wasting the time. Instead, you be thorough with the rules, and whatever you are solving, you should have full confidence in solving that. First step, you have to remember, you should be thorough with the 19 rules of inference and their applications. Main is your application. Then the conditional proof is used for only those arguments whose conclusion is a conditional proposition. You know what a conditional proposition is, where horseshoe is the main connective. So when in the conclusion you see horseshoe, then you have to apply the CP method. And what you have to do? Even if the conclusion has two conditional propositions joined by a conjunction, then also you have to apply the CP method. You have to note this down. Then what you have to do in CP method, that also you must know. You have to assume the antecedent and derive the consequent of the conclusion. Then what you have to do, discharge the assumption. Second one you have to discharge first, and the first one later on, because the scope of the assumption, second assumption lies within the scope of the first assumption. And we are free to take more assumptions depending upon the conclusion. If the consequent of the conclusion is again a conditional proposition, then only we can take the second assumption. These are the small things which we have to note down. Mark the assumption with the head of the arrow and discharge it with its tail. And don't forget to write the justifications for each step. Now let us take an example to understand this. See here, what you can see, that the conclusion is a conditional proposition where horseshoe is the main connective, and the consequent is curl G horseshoe M, where the consequent is again a conditional proposition. So you're going to assume first G, then the second assumption will be G. So this way you will be using your required 19 rules of inference and derive the consequent. Once you get the consequent of the second, you discharge the second assumption first, and then the first assumption you will discharge. And you will be writing the justification on the right hand side in the brackets. So these are the things very important. Sometimes you forget to write the justification, but you solve the steps correctly, then you miss out marks there. So you have to be careful about it. Then we come to the indirect proof. When do we use indirect proof? When the conclusion is other than conditional propositions. Means what? You have curl as the main connective, or you will have simple statement there in the conclusion, or you will have wedge, or you will have dot, or you will have other than horseshoe, triple bar, something like that. Then you will use indirect proof. Okay. In this indirect proof, what you exactly do is assume the negation of the conclusion, and by using the 19 rules, you derive the contradiction. But you don't stop at the contradiction. The last step you use is the rule of conjunction. One thing you have to note down here is what? One logic problem to be solved fully on one page. Now see, your one solved example is given. You can see that assumption you always write in the bracket. You write the word IP. Then by using the required 19 rules, what you do is you try to get the contradiction. You have got the contradiction F and not F. In the 8th step, you have got F, and in the 10th step, you have got not F. So you have joined in the last step with the rule of conjunction. So you have to note this down. Now we come to question number 4a. Give oppositions of propositions as directed. You have to give 3 minutes for each. You have to write the whole statement like this, and the type of proposition in the bracket. Since all word is used, and not is used, so what type of proposition is this? O proposition. You have to write like this in the bracket. Then you will have to write its opposition, which is asked. Contradiction is asked. What is the contradiction of O? That you will be writing in the bracket, and then you will change the form. You have to change only the form. What is the form of A proposition? All SSP. So you will write all flowers are red. Then if it is asked sub-contrary, then you write sub-contrary of O is I. And what is the sub-contrary? I. So symbolic form is some SSP. So you'll change the form to some flowers are red. This is the way you're supposed to write. Sometimes if children tend to forget which is the contradiction to mention and which is the sub-contrary to be mentioned. If you don't mention what is contradiction and what is sub-contrary, then you will not get marks and you will get 0. So note this down, that you have to note right there contradiction A and you whatever the contradiction is and its symbolic form. Then sub-contrary, then what is the sub-contrary and its symbolic form. These are the main things to be noted down. Okay. The form has changed. Now we come to the next B part. Give converse and obverse of the following. Again, you have to give 3 minutes for each. Here also you will have to write down the whole statement. You will have to circle the word used there, write in the bracket, type of proposition. Then what will you do? You will write the subject and the predicate, mark it. Then what will you do the next? Write the converse. Converse of A is I proposition. So write that in the bracket and you know the symbolic form of I. That also will write what you use instead of always. Often you use, and the subject and predicate are interchanged in converse, that you will interchange it. All these things, minor things, you have to remember and follow the rules of logic. Then we come to obverse. Obverse, you have to remember the rule in obversion. What you do? A's obverse is E, and E's symbolic form always will change to never. Okay, and in obverse, what we do? The predicate becomes the complementary to the original predicate. So what is the predicate? Regular. What is complementary to the class of regular class? It will be non-regular. So all these things are important while doing converse and obverse. You have to mention there which is the converse and which is the obverse. Very important. Then we come to question number 5A. You have give reasons. You have to solve any 2 out of 3. Again, you have to give 10 minutes for each give reason. You will have to note this down, that you have to write the answer in points. But the points should be not written just in one sentence. You have to explain each point. Okay. Now the question asked is, when both UI and EI are used in a proof, EI should be used first. Why? Then you will have to mention that what is EI, what you are doing in EI, and what are the substitution instances. Then why, what are the weaknesses if you use UI first and EI later. This you have to mention in your answer. For every give reason, you have to write in points, and 2 points you are supposed to write in your answer. Elaborate your points. You are art students and you are expected to elaborate your points. Then we come to question number 5B, where you have to recognize with reasons the fallacies committed in categorical syllogism. So you have to note this in this order. If you go, then you will not make mistakes in recognizing the fallacies and giving reasons. First step you will have to note is you have to check the number of propositions in the given argument, whether there are 3 or more than 3. Secondly, you will have to check the type of propositions in an argument. That is, whether it is A proposition, whether it is E proposition, I proposition, or O proposition. Then you will have to check the rules of quality. There are two rules of quality. You know that. First rule is that no conclusion can be drawn from two negative premises. So check whether both the premises are negative. Secondly, second rule is that when either of the premises is negative, then the conclusion must be negative. So you check whether either of the premises is negative and the conclusion is affirmative or what. Then fourth thing you have to check is the rule of distribution. So you must know the rules of distribution, all the three rules of distribution, and you must know also the distribution of terms in each proposition, that is A, E, I, and O. You know that in A proposition, the subject is distributed, whereas the predicate is undistributed, and so on. So you must know all those things also. So then you have to check the fallacy of four terms, whether any term, whether the subject term, predicate term, or the middle term is used ambiguously. All these are the minor things in logic, but they carry marks. Then let us take an example to understand. Suppose the argument given is all apples are not red, no apples are ripe, therefore some ripe fruits are not red. So what you have to note first, whether there are, how many propositions are there in this given argument? There are three. So it's a categorical syllogism. Now second thing what you have to check, the types of proposition. So all and not is used. So it's an O proposition, no and is used. So it's an E proposition. So some not is used. So it's an O proposition. So these are the things which you have to note it down. Then since O is a negative proposition, you have to note that down. Then second proposition is also a negative proposition. So you have to note this down. Then since both the premises are negative, no conclusion can be drawn from them. This is the rule. But the conclusion has been drawn here. So which fallacy you commit? The fallacy of negative premises, because the rule that no conclusion can be drawn from two negative premises is violated. So now in one argument there may have more than one fallacy, so you will have to check everything. The subject is ripe, it is undistributed, so the question of checking it in the premise does not arise. So in the next you will have to check the predicate term red of the conclusion. It is distributed in the conclusion. So it has to be distributed in the premise. So let us check where does it lie in the first premise. So it's distributed in the first premise. So it does not violate the rule. Now we'll have to check apples, which is the middle term. It is distributed in both the premises because it is the subject of A and E proposition, universal propositions. So there is no violation of other rules, only one fallacy is committed. If suppose there is any other rule is violated, then you have to mention the other fallacy with reasons. Don't forget to write reasons because it carries marks. Okay, so note this down. You will have to write the argument in the answer sheet because you will have to mark all the subject, predicate, middle term, negative AEIO proposition, negative or affirmative premises. All this you will have to write it in your answer sheet. So this is very, very important to score marks in logic. Now we come to question number 5. See, symbolize the following 4 minutes, 1 minute each. Now see here again, you will have to write the whole statement and only the symbolic form you are supposed to write. Now while symbolizing, you tend to make mistakes. You forget to write the brackets. Brackets are very, very important in logic because they are the punctuation marks. Like in English languages, you punctuate the sentence, then only you understand the meaning. And similarly, in logic, brackets punctuate and you understand the main connectives. So your brackets are important. The first one is wrong, the second one is wrong, the third is the way of writing the symbolic form. So there are no unicorns. You have negation of existential quantifier UX is the correct answer. Existential quantifier means lateral inverted image of EX in the bracket. Okay. So that you don't forget to write. Here all parrots are birds. So universal quantifier PX horseshoe BX. This has to be written in the bracket. If you forget the brackets, again it will go wrong. You will have to write the brackets. So this is the way of writing. Okay. Now we come to the next question number 6A. Explain the following. You will have to solve 2 out of 3. In explain the following, you will have to choose those questions whose answers you know thoroughly. Secondly, always write the headings and underline the main heading and then start writing it. Choose the question whose answers have diagrams, tables, etc. Always explain with examples because examples are important in logic. Then write the answer in points with its explanation. Don't write only points and keep. Please explain the points. See how they are explained here. If suppose you are asked a question on contrary relation, then you will have to write in this manner. You will have to write the table. Then in points you will have to elaborate the answers. Okay, the table you will have to write. See the diagram you have to draw. Diagram is important. Diagram, next page. Third point is important. Then we come to the next question number 6B. Construct formal proof of validity. In this also you have to note what you have to note here. You have to note that if the conclusion has an universal quantifier, you have to always use Y as the substitution instance, arbitrarily selected individual. Then you have to note that when the constant is there in the premise line and you have to use the rule of UI only, then you have to use the same constant in the case of UI. Then when EI and UI are to be used simultaneously in the argument, then always use EI first. When always use a constant, individual constant that has not occurred in the premise line. These are the points to be noted. Then next, see one example. See the example. You see that the conclusion you have an universal quantifier. So you have to use Y as an arbitrarily selected individual as the substitution instance. Universal quantifier is there in the conclusion, then note it down that you have to use Y as an arbitrarily selected individual. Then next example. Here, note down that existential quantifier is there in the argument, so you have to always use EI rule first. But while using the EI rule, you have to use the constant which is not occurred in the premise. In the premise you have F. F is there in the third premise. So do not use F as the substitution instance. Use other than F. That is A you are using as the substitution instance. Now we come to the next slide. Question number 7. Answer the following. You have to solve 2 out of 4, 20 minutes, 10 minutes each. Write 3 points and explain them with examples. Always write in points and explain them with examples for 3 marks. You have to write it in 10 minutes. This is the way you are supposed to write the answer. See in the next slide, the third point. Now B, you will have an essay type answer. You have to give 30 minutes for it. You have to write 6 points at least, explain in detail with examples. Examples also you have to explain in detail the example also for essay type answers. Next slide, please. You have to write in detail with examples. This is very, very important. Now we come to internal written exam, carries 20 marks. So either of the questions may be asked. It depends on the college. They might ask only fill in the blanks for 20 marks, or they might ask all the 4 for 20 marks, or only give logical terms for 20 marks. Depends on the college. Objective questions will be either of the above or all the 4. So you need to be thorough with the textbook. Read all the lessons thoroughly. Okay. Now we come to reduction in portion for the year 2021. 25% portion is excluded this year. Chapter 3, need for predicate logic is excluded. And in syllogism 5.5, Aristotelian syllogism and Nyaya syllogism. Then chapter 6, grounds of induction, in which 6.6, experiments 6.7, nature of experiment and characteristics of experiment 6.8 is excluded. Chapter 7, 7.6 is excluded. In hypothesis, verification of hypothesis is excluded. So please note this down. Thank you.
Hello students, I hope you are totally satisfied. Do you have any queries? You may ask in chat box or unmute yourself and you may ask any question to Meeta madam. Yes, Gauri, Aisha, any doubts? Atharva?
No,
Yes,
Any
Gauri.
doubts anybody has?
no,
Can
ma'am, I
ask.
don't have any doubts. All of the doubts are cleared.
Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Anyone else? Any doubt you may ask now?
Everything's clear?
Okay, shall we conclude the meeting then? You all are happy?
Yes,
Unmute
ma'am.
and speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Gauri, thank you.
Pada